They didn't chain my wrists. My dignity was enough of a shackle. I kept waiting to wake up, to find this wasn't my life, but every jolt of the carriage wheels whispered the same truth. I was being delivered to a monster, and nobody was coming to save me. The road blurred past the window. Gray trees, dead leaves, the world I once knew shrinking behind me with every mile. I pressed my forehead to the cold metal bars and tried to swallow the rising panic clawing up my throat. My stepmother's final words still poisoned my ears. "Debts must be paid, girl. Your father left nothing but you." Her smile had been triumphant. Mine had been broken. The guards across from me barely spoke. Wolves in armor, smelling like iron and rain, staring at me as though I were something filthy on their boots. My fingers curled around my own skirt, knuckles white. I wanted to ask them what the Alpha King was like, but every story I knew already tasted like blood. Kaedor, the king who ripped out throats with his bare hands. The Alpha so feared, other Alphas knelt without being asked. The man who killed his mate the night his son was born. And now he owned me. The carriage lurched violently, wheels jarring against stone, and one of the wolves smirked. "Don't faint, little maid. His Majesty likes his servants conscious." I bit my tongue before a scream could rip loose. Then, through the bars, I saw the palace. A fortress of black stone rising against the twilight, walls etched with claw marks, as if the building itself had survived centuries of rage. Wolf statues guarded the entrance, snarling marble jaws frozen mid-threat. Even from here, the air tasted thicker, charged, electric, like lightning about to strike. My heart stuttered. They dragged me from the carriage. My knees hit the ground hard, gravel cutting through fabric and skin. Someone laughed. Another spit near me. "The king paid a good price for that one?" "Nah," someone replied. "She was payment." A third scoffed. "He'll break her inside a week." My face burned as hot shame crawled up my neck. I forced myself to lift my head, and that was when I heard it. Wolves whispering, servants murmuring, a rumor curling through the courtyard like smoke. "They should hide the prince. She'll see the curse. Born wolfless, that boy. A disgrace. The king pretends he doesn't have a son at all. If I were him, I'd drown the kid." My stomach knotted with a sick chill. A wolfless prince? That wasn't just misfortune. It was blasphemy. And suddenly I understood why the king was feared more than death itself. Why every story called him ruthless, merciless, unbreakable. The entire kingdom believed the bloodline was cursed, and he was desperate enough to tear his own mate apart for it. Cold rain began to fall. A guard grabbed my arm and pushed me through the palace doors like I was a sack of grain, not a living thing with a voice and a pulse and a name. The doors slammed shut behind me, the echo thundering through the entrance hall. Final. Suffocating. Absolute. Inside smelled of wax and wolf musk and cold stone. Everything gleamed. Floors polished to the shine of mirrors, towering pillars carved with snarling wolves, chandeliers dripping like frost. And everywhere, eyes. Dozens of servants froze mid-task to stare at me, brows lifting, mouths curling in amusement or disgust. I wasn't sure which was worse. One woman, older and sharp as splintered bone, stepped forward. "New blood," she sneered to the crowd. "Fresh debt." Laughter rippled like acid. I felt it on my skin. The guard who had escorted me shoved a parchment into her hand. "Property transfer. She belongs to His Majesty now." The woman's smile slithered wider. "Of course she does." My stomach turned. Belongs. That word worked into my ribs and settled there like rot. Without looking at me again, the guard left. The door shut. The world shrank. The woman snapped her fingers. "Stand straight." I did. She circled me once, gaze dragging up my body with practiced cruelty. "Name?" "Lyris," I whispered. Her eyes glinted. You whisper like prey. Speak. I swallowed hard. Lyris. That's better. Her grin didn't reach her eyes. Nothing in this place did. Behind her, servants dispersed, though not without more snickers. One girl mouthed, "Good luck." Another sliced a finger across her throat. My heart hammered. You'll be assigned cleaning duties until the king decides what to do with you, the woman continued. I am Mistress Halden, overseer of domestic staff. Your every breath answers to me. Fail even once, and you'll find yourself on waste duty in the stables with the other failures. I nodded. Too fast. Too eager. Mistress Halden grabbed my chin between thumb and forefinger, nails digging deep. Eager to please. That won't last. I flinched, despite trying not to. Satisfied with my humiliation, she dropped my face and snapped at the nearest servant. Show her to the lower quarters. A girl about my age stepped forward, head bowed. Yes, mistress. She motioned silently for me to follow. My legs felt numb as I trailed behind her down a long corridor, my steps echoing across endless marble. I tried to take in details, anything to anchor myself. Tapestries embroidered with wolves, flickering torch flames, the deep, red carpet like spilled blood beneath my feet. But the air itself felt hollow, too wide and ancient to warm. We descended a curved staircase leading to the servant wing. The deeper we went, the colder the walls became, moisture clinging like sweat. The girl finally spoke, voice low. Don't look anyone in the eye. They'll rip you apart. I blinked. Are the nobles that cruel? She gave a humorless laugh. You misunderstand. I meant the servants. A chill slid down my spine. She pushed open a heavy wooden door and gestured inside. This is where you sleep. The room was little more than a drafty stone chamber lined with narrow cots, straw mattresses, threadbare blankets. The smell of mold and desperation lingered in the air. This can't be the entire servant quarters, I murmured. It's the quarters for servants the king didn't request personally, she corrected softly. There are levels here, ranks. Kings above alphas, alphas above nobles, nobles above guards, guards above servants, and servants above... She hesitated. Above what? She swallowed. Above you. The words hit harder than any blow. Her gaze darted to my wrists, where faint red bruises marred my skin. You were sold, weren't you? I nodded. She nodded back, sympathy flickering and dying at once. Then remember this. Anything you say or do could reach the king. And if you offend him, he won't punish you. I stared. What do you mean? He won't need to. She left before I could ask more. I sat on the nearest cot, wrapping my arms around myself as silence closed in. My heart was still beating too fast, my thoughts too loud. What am I doing here? I tried to breathe, but the air felt stolen from someone braver. Footsteps rustled at the doorway. I tensed, ready for another command, only to see a small figure standing there. A boy. No, the boy. Sylas. I knew even before anyone spoke. The whispers, the pitying looks, they didn't need words to identify him. He stood just inside the threshold, thin and pale beneath black hair that fell into his eyes. His clothes were royal cut but worn, sleeves frayed at the wrists. His shoulders curled inward, as if trying to vanish inside himself. He looked at me, really looked, without blinking or judgment. His eyes were gray like storm clouds, empty in a way that made my throat ache. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Hello, I whispered gently. I'm Lyris. He said nothing, just stared with a strange, cautious curiosity, as though trying to decide whether I was real or dream. Then a voice echoed down the corridor, sharp as a whip. Sylas, get back here! He flinched, stepping away from me so fast it hurt to watch. Another servant strode in, grabbing his arm with rough force. Your father won't tolerate wandering. Come. Sylas didn't argue, didn't resist, didn't speak. He simply let himself be dragged away like a ghost wearing a boy's skin. Something inside me cracked open. It was one thing to hear rumors. It was another to see them breathe. I had expected the cursed prince to be dangerous, wild, unpredictable. But he was fragile, frayed, silent, and the palace around him was colder than any cage. I lay down that night and closed my eyes, exhaustion dragging at my bones. But sleep didn't come. Not really. I kept seeing Sylas's face, the vacancy in his gaze, the hollow curve of his shoulders. And I knew, deep and certain, he wasn't cursed by fate or blood. He was cursed by loneliness. Sometime before dawn, I whispered into the darkness, voice barely a breath, "I'm going to help him." The room stayed silent. But under the silence, under the stone, under the palace itself, something shifted. Like the ground recognizing a storm on the horizon. Fear curled inside my chest. Not of the king, or the servants, or even death. Fear of the truth I had just spoken into existence. Because the girl who arrived trembling and broken had just made a promise bigger than survival. To care. To fight. To matter. And in this place, that might be the most dangerous thing I could ever do. Breakfast in the servants' hall was a battlefield of elbows and whispers, tin plates, stale bread, lukewarm broth. I sat at the end of the long table, trying to make myself small as voices around me clashed like blades. Servants boasted cruelly, betting how long I'd last, how soon I'd break. But I'd woken with a strange steadiness in my chest, a quiet thread of purpose wrapped around Sylas's hollow gaze. I didn't know what I could do for him. I only knew I couldn't do nothing. I took another sip of the watery broth and tried to ignore the mud-thick exhaustion dragging through my limbs. A full night of thinking had left me bone-tired. Someone slammed their tray down beside mine. I jumped. "Don't get attached to the prince," a girl muttered under her breath. "He's cursed. And anyone near him will be burned alive with him." I shook my head. "He's just a boy," she snorted. "He's a problem." Before I could answer, the hall hushed, so suddenly it felt like the world had been strangled. Voices died, chairs scraped, heads bowed. I didn't notice what everyone stared at, until the hairs on my arms rose like a warning. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. And then a voice, low and dangerous, rolled over us. "Continue eating." The words didn't sound like a suggestion. They sounded like a command wrapped in a threat. He walked into view. Kaedor, the Alpha King. He crossed the hall with the unhurried stride of a man who feared nothing. Not death, not gods, not fate. His cloak dragged behind him, darkness flowing across stone. He was dressed in deep black leather that clung to his frame like armor, silver clasps glinting beneath torchlight. But it wasn't the clothing that trapped the air in my lungs. It was him. He was built like he had been carved from the bones of the world, tall, broad-shouldered, thick muscle beneath royal stillness. His hair hung long, brushing the base of his neck, black as raven's feathers and slightly untamed. Shadows caught in the strands as though even light feared him. His jaw was sharp, his nose straight, his expression unreadable stone. But his eyes, gods, his eyes, silver, cold, alive, like moonlight on the edge of a blade. He surveyed the room, and everywhere his gaze touched, wolves bowed lower. Conversations shrank to silence. Breathing became a privilege. I should have looked away. I wanted to look away. But something inside me froze, caught, unable to move, unable to blink. Kaedor's gaze swept past me, indifferent. And yet, my pulse surged with something traitorous and hot. Heat, fear, curiosity, resentment. A dizzying mix that felt like drowning and burning at once. Then I saw him. Sylas. He stood near the table across from me, smaller than everyone, shoulders slumped, head down, holding a tray that shook in his hand. He wasn't seated. He wasn't eating. He just watched his father approach with hollow eyes. Kaedor didn't look at him. Not even once. He walked right past his son, close enough to brush him, close enough to acknowledge him, and did nothing. It was as if Sylas didn't exist. Every wolf at the table saw it. Every wolf pretended not to. Something inside my ribcage twisted painfully. Anger sparked low and deep. Sylas lowered his head further, face flushing, trying to disappear. Kaedor stopped at the far end of the table, giving an order to Mistress Halden. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw her stiffen, pale, nod violently and rush away. Then he turned, slowly, and his gaze landed on Sylas. Just for a heartbeat. Just long enough to carve another wound into the boy's spine. And then Kaedor tilted his head, voice loud enough for the hall to hear. Why is he standing here? The boy eats after the others. Does he need reminding? Sylas flinched as a guard stepped forward, grabbed his shoulder and shoved him toward the corner of the hall, the shadows, the outskirts, the nowhere. Gasps sounded quickly smothered. Sylas didn't resist. He didn't even lift his head. He just obeyed. And the king watched him go with no more emotion than if he were staring at dust being swept aside. My throat burned. My hands shook. You see? Someone whispered near me. The king hates him. Hate was too small a word. Kaedor despised him, dismissed him, unmade him. It was humiliating enough to watch. I couldn't imagine being Sylas, living it. Kaedor turned once more, gaze sweeping the hall. It passed over everyone like a blade checking for cracks. And then, for one impossible second, it locked with mine. Silver eyes met mine. Lightning, fire, terror. He looked right through me, saw everything I was, everything I wasn't, everything I feared. My breath stuttered. The air became too thick. The stone beneath my feet seemed to shift. A warning thrummed through my blood. Do not look away. But I did. I dropped my gaze so fast my neck ached. Heat scorched up my throat. Not from attraction. Though something traitorous fluttered low in my belly. Yes. But from rage. Because a king should protect his child. Because a father should never cut his son down in front of an audience. And because, for the first time since arriving, I hated Kaedor. Truly hated him. He was everything the world whispered. Brutal, merciless, untouchable. And yet, even as I sat trembling, furious, disgusted, I wanted to lift my gaze again. Just one more time. To see him, to understand him, to feel the dangerous heat of those silver eyes land on me. But I didn't risk it. I kept my head bowed, breathing shallow and shaking, until his footsteps echoed away, until silence eased back into noise, until the hall filled with whispers again. Only then did I dare lift my gaze, and found Sylas staring at me from the shadows. His eyes weren't empty this time. They were pleading, and in that fragile, silent gaze, I made another promise to myself. I would never let him stand alone again. Even if the king himself tried to stop me. Even if this palace swallowed me whole. Somewhere deep inside the air shifted. Old magic stirring, wolf bones humming, fate yawning awake. And I knew. The moment Kaedor's eyes touched mine, something had started between us. Something violent. Something forbidden. Something inevitable. And whatever it was, it would destroy us all. By midday, Mistress Halden had already found new ways to bruise what little pride I had left. Get up, she barked, throwing a folded uniform in my direction. You will assist Prince Sylas in his daily tasks, dressing, reading, eating. Whatever he fails to do properly, you will do for him. I blinked. Me? Yes, you. A debt girl might as well be useful. A quiet ripple of laughter passed through the servants around us. Mistress Halden leaned close enough for her breath to brush my ear. Do not look him in the eye without permission. Do not touch him unless required. Do not speak unless he asks. And above all, do not let the king see you fail. Her nails dug briefly, deliberately into my shoulder before she shoved me away. I swallowed hard, heart pounding as I followed the hallway toward the prince's wing. The palace grew quieter the deeper I walked, sound smothered by thick walls and heavy tapestries. Every step echoed like a heartbeat. When I reached Sylas's chamber, a guard outside the door nodded once. He's inside. He's expecting you. Expecting me? I opened the door carefully. Sylas sat alone near the window, knees drawn to his chest, staring out at the training grounds below. Wolves sparred beneath the sunlight, claws flashing, teeth bared in the air like silver strikes. Thunderous howls rose with every clash. Sylas watched them with a longing that hollowed his whole shape. He didn't turn to me, didn't seem startled. He just spoke, voice soft as dust. You're the girl from the servants' hall. I nodded, even though he wasn't looking. Lyris. He hummed faintly at my name, like he was rolling it through his thoughts. I approached slowly. I'm here to help you get ready. Silence stretched, fragile and taut. I don't need help, he mumbled, but the shaking in his fingers told a different story. I knelt beside him, holding the clean shirt Mistress Halden had given me. May I? Sylas hesitated. Then he nodded. I helped him remove his old shirt. Thin fabric, sliding over thin skin. His shoulders and ribs were visible beneath pale flesh, as if he had grown without ever eating enough, breathing enough, living enough. His body looked like the outline of a boy who never got to be one. When I slipped the fresh shirt over his arms, he whispered, Do you think they can see it? The emptiness under my skin? I froze. What emptiness? My wolf, he said, voice trembling. Everyone knows she's supposed to be there. She isn't. I placed my hands gently on his sleeves, smoothing the fabric. Then maybe she's just quiet. He gave a humorless laugh. Quiet wolves don't exist. My heart ached. I helped him stand and he leaned into me slightly, just enough that I felt the weight of his exhaustion. Did they tell you I was cursed? He asked. I nodded slowly. And weak? Yes. And broken? I swallowed. They're wrong. Sylas turned his head, eyes lifting to mine. A slow, disbelieving hope flickered there. Nobody has ever said that before. I didn't know what to do with the sudden swell in my chest. Protective, fierce, unfamiliar. We sat at the small table near the window as sunlight crept between us like a bridge. I cut his food into small bites without needing to be asked. Sylas ate quietly, mechanically, each motion practiced but hollow. You're not afraid of me, he finally whispered. Should I be? He shook his head. No. But most people think I'm cursed. They think I'll poison their wolves just by breathing near them. That's ridiculous. He lowered his gaze. They don't know what it feels like to be the king's shame. The words stabbed deep. Kaedor's earlier cruelty replayed in my mind. The public humiliation, the cold dismissal, the absence of even a glance at his son. The entire kingdom saw Sylas the way Kaedor taught them to, as unwanted, unworthy, unwolfed. Sylas traced a line in the wood grain with his fingertip. They tried to make me shift once, years ago. They thought pain would wake my wolf. His voice broke. My father held me down. He told the pack I would shift or die trying. They waited for my bones to break. They waited for blood. I felt sick. What happened? I whispered. He looked up, gray eyes brittle. Nothing. Silence devoured the room. I reached across the table before I realized I'd moved, fingertips brushing his knuckles, a soft, instinctive comfort. The moment our skin touched, heat surged beneath my palm, wild, startling, ancient. Sylas jerked, eyes widening. What was that? I don't know. But I did. Somewhere deep inside my bones, something old stirred. Like a wolf stretching from a long sleep, pressing its heartbeat into mine. My breath trembled. Sylas whispered, voice desperate, "Do it again." I pulled my hand away, pulse racing. I shouldn't. I don't understand it. Sylas looked down, shoulders folding inward again. "You're kind," he said softly. "Someone will punish you for that here." I exhaled shakily. Then I'll learn to be quiet. But another truth burned behind it. I would not unfeel this pull. I would not unsee his pain. And whatever power hummed inside me, whatever spark had awakened, I had a feeling it wasn't meant to stay quiet. Not in this palace, not with this boy, not under this king. Something inside this place was broken. And if I wasn't careful, my presence might be the first crack in its walls. The prince's room emptied at dusk. Tutors dismissed, servants scattered, guards stationed outside the door. Night pulled its velvet cloak over the palace, swallowing sound and color alike. Sylas sat curled at the edge of his bed, knees hugged to his chest, eyes fixed on the window where the moon hung low and swollen. "I ache there," he whispered, touching his ribs, "where my wolf should be. It feels like she's trapped behind bone." Something in the way he said, she made my heart twist. Not it. Not wolf. She. Like a friend lost in the dark. I knelt beside him. "Tell me what it feels like." Sylas stared at the moonlight painting the stone floor. Like my body wants to break open. Like I'm locked outside myself. He rubbed his arms as though trying to warm frozen skin. And when wolves shift outside, his voice thinned. My whole chest burns. His pain vibrated through me, an electric pulse I couldn't ignore. I should walk away. I should pretend I never heard any of it. But I had already made my silent promise. So I inhaled slowly and said, "We'll try something, but it has to stay secret." His head snapped up, gray eyes wide. "Secret?" I nodded. "Nobody can know. Not the servants, not the guards, especially not the king." Fear flashed across his face, quickly followed by trembling hope. "That night in the hall," he whispered, "when Father looked through me like I wasn't real, I swore that if I ever shift, even once, just once, he might see me." It wasn't anger in his voice. It was longing. It broke me open. I took his hands and guided him to the center of the room. "Stand here, bare feet on the floor." He obeyed. The stone beneath us was cold and ancient, humming with faint memory. "Close your eyes," I whispered. "Breathe deep." He drew in a shaking breath, shoulders lifting. "Again," I murmured. "Slow. Feel every inch of air." Another breath, deeper this time. His lashes fluttered. His fingers twitched in mine. "You're not empty," I told him quietly. "You're holding something powerful, and she wants out." "How do you know?" I didn't. Not really. But I felt it, like a whisper in my blood. "Because I saw your eyes earlier," I said. "There's a wolf in there waiting." He swallowed hard. "And if she's dead, then we'll wake her." The silence that followed trembled like a bowstring stretched too tight. I guided his breathing, steady, slow, rhythmic. "In for 4, I said softly, pressing his palm to his heart. "Out for 6. Let go of fear one breath at a time." Moonlight washed over his face, turning his skin silver. Gradually his shoulders loosened, his breaths deepening. "That tightness," he whispered, "is easing." I nodded, voice low. "Good." My fingers brushed his pulse. It jumped beneath my touch, hot, fast. His eyes opened. "Is that you?" Heat crawled up my neck. "What do you mean?" "When you touch me," he murmured, voice barely sound, "my chest stops hurting." I froze. The power inside me stirred again, sharp, bright, unfamiliar, as if answering him. "I think you calm her," he whispered. A flicker of something ancient pulsed in my veins. I stepped back quickly. "Sit on the floor." He obeyed, cross-legged, expectant. We practiced like that for an hour, breathing, visualizing, shaping silence around his trembling body. I told him to imagine bones shifting, fur growing, paws striking earth. He whispered the images back to me, hesitant, then eager. When his fingers shook uncontrollably, I guided them still. When his breath faltered, I breathed with him. The world outside us faded. There was only moonlight, stone, breath, and something sparking between our hands every time we touched. When he finally sagged backward, exhausted, sweat glistening at his temple, he looked at me with dazed wonder. "I felt it," he breathed. "What?" "A heartbeat. Not my own." I stared, stunned. "From where?" He pointed to his ribs, the same place he had said it ached. A pulse of triumph surged through me. "We'll do this again," I whispered, voice thick. "Every night." Sylas nodded without hesitation. "Please." He gripped my wrist. Not tight, not possessive. Just grateful. "You're the first person who ever tried to help me," he said, voice breaking. "Thank you." I brushed a strand of hair away from his eyes and forced a smile. "We'll wake your wolf." As I stood to leave, my hand brushed the wall beside the door, rough stone still warm from torchlight. But when I turned to look back, Sylas was staring at me like I was the moon itself, like I was hope. I slipped into the corridor, heart hammering. I didn't see the guards positioned in the shadows farther down the hall, watching, listening. I vanished into the servant wing unaware, carrying a growing power in my blood and fire in my purpose. Never realizing the Alpha King now knew my name and was already deciding what I would become. 3 nights passed in a blur of breath and whispered instructions. Sylas improved faster than I could have imagined, his lungs steadier, his posture stronger, his gaze brighter. Hope unfurled inside him like wings. But hope can make fools of us all. By the 4th night, something felt wrong. The air in Sylas's chamber tasted thicker, not just charged with moonlight and effort, but watched. Sylas sat cross-legged on the floor, palms braced against his knees, his breathing deep and rhythmic just the way I taught him. "Again," I murmured. "Draw breath from your belly, not your throat." He inhaled, exhaled, smooth, controlled. Proud heat spread through my chest. "You're getting closer," I whispered. He kept his eyes closed, but a smile tugged at his lips. "I know." My heart squeezed with warmth, until a prickle of ice crawled down my spine. Someone was here, watching. I lifted my head slowly. At first I saw nothing, the shadows clinging to the corners of the room like smoke. But shadows in this palace had weight, and the most dangerous ones breathed. I stood, spine rigid. "Sylas," I murmured, keeping my voice calm. "Open your eyes." He obeyed instantly, confusion knitting his brows. "What is it?" I didn't answer. I walked to the balcony doors, wooden frames etched with claw marks older than the kingdom itself. The drapes stirred faintly, though the air inside was still. I pushed them aside. There, just beyond glass and darkness, stood a figure. Tall as nightmare, still as carved stone. Gazing straight at me. Kaedor, the Alpha King. Moonlight spilled along his frame, outlining the breadth of his shoulders, the thick leather stretched over muscle, the sharp line of his jaw. His hair was wind-tossed, strands falling across silver eyes, fixed on me with predatory intensity. He said nothing. He didn't need to. My pulse thundered. Heat raced through every limb. I should have curtsied. Lowered my head, begged forgiveness. Instead, I met his gaze. The air between us snapped with tension. Raw, electric, terrifying. Sylas froze behind me, voice whisper thin. Father. Kaedor didn't look at him, not even for a moment. His stare remained on me, cold, ruthless, searching, as if trying to peel back skin and bone to see what lived beneath. He stepped through the balcony doors without sound, boots quiet against stone. Sylas bowed so quickly he nearly toppled. I did not. I couldn't. My spine locked stubbornly upright. Kaedor's eyes narrowed on that defiance. The silence was suffocating, until his voice cut through the dark. What do you think you are doing with my son? Every word dragged like iron. My mouth went dry. Helping him. His lip curled faintly. Helping? I forced myself not to step back as the king stalked closer. You dare touch him? Dare speak to him as if you are equals? Dare guide him in matters you do not understand? Rage radiated off him in slow waves, but something else hid beneath. Confusion, curiosity, hunger. Kaedor towered over me, heat rolling off his body. You will stay away from him, he said softly, dangerously. From this moment forward. Behind me, Sylas gasped. No, father! Kaedor turned his head just enough to silence him. It wasn't a glare. Just absence of acknowledgement. Sylas folded back into himself, trembling. My throat burned. He needs help, I said quietly. Kaedor's gaze sharpened into lethal steel. He needs nothing from you. My voice shook, but I held the line. He needs someone to see him. Kaedor's eyes darkened, storm clouds swallowing moonlight. You are a servant, he growled. A debt-ridden girl bought with silver scraps. You are nothing here. The words struck like blows, meant to crush, but instead they ignited something fierce in my chest. I lifted my chin. And you are his father. The silence after that was total. Sylas's breath caught. The castle seemed to inhale sharply. Even the torches flickered lower. Kaedor leaned in until his face was a breath from mine. Do not presume to speak to me of fatherhood. His voice shook, not with anger alone, but with something raw. Grief, guilt, hatred of himself. It was there, brief, unguarded, and gone. You will sleep in the lower quarters again, he snapped, and you will forget this foolishness. My whole body trembled, but not from fear, from fury, from protectiveness, from that strange pulse in my bones whispering, no. Sylas stepped forward suddenly, his voice, usually soft, held steel. She helps me breathe. Kaedor froze. The words hung in the room like prophecy. Sylas swallowed. When she touches me, the pain stops. The king stared at his son, expression unreadable. Slowly he turned back to me. His voice dropped to a whisper, a threat wrapped in fascination. What are you? My blood hummed, every vein alive with the echo of that question. I don't know, I said honestly. Our eyes locked again, hot, electric, terrifying. Something passed between us. Rage and heat, fear and wanting, two storms circling the same fire. Kaedor took a single step back, gaze never breaking from mine. Stay away from my son, he repeated, but softer now, almost shaken. Then he turned and strode away, cloak swirling, leaving the balcony doors open behind him. Sylas whispered my name. I stood frozen, heart in my throat, breathing shallow. The king's voice still echoed inside me, low, rumbling, haunted. What are you? I didn't have an answer, but deep inside my bones, something ancient stirred in response, and the air tasted of iron and prophecy. Kaedor wanted me to stay away, but fate, in its cruel, beautiful way, was already pushing us closer. The king's warning gnawed at me for 2 days. Stay away from my son. The words clung to my ribs like shackles, heavy, suffocating, echoing through every thought. I tried to obey. Truly, I did. I swept corridors, scrubbed stone floors until my fingers split, mended blankets in the servant wing, while overheard laughter scraped my spine raw. But Sylas haunted me. His trembling voice, his desperate hope, his pain. And that night, when moonlight slanted across my cot and the air filled with white static, I felt something calling, not just to my mind, to my blood. Before I could talk myself out of it, I left my cot, silent as a shadow, and slipped through the sleeping servant quarters into the deep corridors beyond. Every step toward Sylas's room felt like stepping closer to a cliff's edge, but I kept walking, because he needed me. And because I was beginning to need him, too. When I reached his door, he was already awake, sitting upright, breathing fast, eyes wide with panic. "I thought you wouldn't come," he whispered, voice shaking. "I almost didn't," I admitted. But something felt wrong. He nodded quickly. "It hurts tonight." That single word, hurts, held more weight than a scream. "Where?" I asked. He pressed a hand to his ribs. "Everywhere. Like," his voice hitched, "like bones trying to turn to dust." My heart pounded. I knelt beside him, placing both hands on his knees. "Look at me," I whispered. He did, gray eyes raw and shining. "Breathe slow," I told him. "Just like before." He tried. He inhaled, then gasped, flinching violently as something inside him snapped. The sound was sharp and wrong, like a joint pulled too far. I froze. He clutched his shoulder, panting. "What was that?" he gasped. I swallowed. "A change." He shook his head rapidly. "Lyris, I think something is happening." His breathing fractured into desperate bursts, and panic slammed through me. Not fear for myself, fear for him. I grabbed his hands. "Focus on me, on my voice." He squeezed back hard, hard enough to bruise, and then, crack! His spine arched, back bowing unnaturally. His jaw clenched, teeth grinding together, and his eyes rolled white. I caught him before he fell. He clung to me, shaking violently. "My bones!" he gasped. "They're moving." Anguish tore through his voice. I held him tighter. "It's okay. Let it happen." He shook his head wildly. No, I can't. "Yes, you can." Something fierce ripped through my chest. Hot, wild, uncontainable. I shifted my hands to his shoulders, pressing my forehead to his. Inside me, something roared awake. Not gentle this time, not quiet. A blazing storm. Heat flared through my palms, racing into him. Sylas choked on a gasp. "Lyris!" A surge of energy, thick as lightning, shot between us. I felt it. He felt it. The room felt it. It was like grabbing hold of a live star. Sparks raced under our skin, pulsing, crackling. Sylas's body jerked, his fingers curled like claws. His nails lengthened, just for a heartbeat, before shrinking again. His ribs expanded too far, then snapped back. A howl, part human, part wolf, tore from his throat, raw and ragged. My vision blurred with white light. Sylas's eyes flew open, not gray, not human. Silver. Glowing. Wolf eyes for one impossible heartbeat. I saw the wolf inside him, fur rippling under skin, bones shifting into new shapes, a shadow becoming substance. Then Sylas screamed. The magic broke. His body collapsed against mine, shaking with violent sobs. I held him, breath torn from my lungs, heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to break free. "What just—" I began. He lifted his head slowly and whispered, voice cracked and reverent. "I was shifting." A sound left me, part sob, part laughter. "You almost did," I whispered back. "Almost," he echoed, voice fragile with wonder. I brushed his hair back from his damp forehead. "You're not broken, Sylas." "You're waking up." His lips trembled. I felt her. My wolf. She moved. A shiver ran through me, not cold, Alive, but then... Sylas's gaze shifted over my shoulder. His face went pale. My heart stuttered. I turned. There, just inside the balcony doorway, half swallowed by shadow, stood Kaedor. Silent, unmoving, watching. His eyes burned silver through the dark, fixed on Sylas, then on me, then back to Sylas. Not rage, not disbelief. A horror-stricken awe. He had seen everything. Sylas tensed violently, voice barely a breath. "Father." Kaedor didn't respond. He just stepped forward into the moonlight, his jaw locked, his hands curled into fists. His voice, when it came, was low and raw enough to scrape bone. "Do that again." Sylas flinched. I stood, pulling him with me. Protective instinct surged, bright and undeniable. "He needs rest," I said sharply. Kaedor's gaze snapped to mine, lightning quick. "And you," he growled, "need to remember your place." My pulse hammered, fear and fury twisting together. But Sylas gripped my arm and whispered, trembling, "Please don't leave." Kaedor's expression shattered for a heartbeat at those words, a crack of pain so fierce I almost stepped back. Then he hit it, buried it, and the king returned. "Leave," Kaedor ordered. "Now." Every instinct screamed to argue, but Sylas nodded faintly, eyes pleading. "It's okay. Go." My chest fractured, but I obeyed. Feet dragging, pulse trembling, I crossed the door. Just before I stepped into the hall, I heard Sylas whisper, "Father, did you see?" And Kaedor replied, voice breaking like thunder, "Yes." A breath, a silence. I saw everything. And then I felt the king's gaze burn through the door after me. Hot enough to brand, deep enough to unravel everything I thought I knew. Sylas had nearly shifted, and I had been the spark. I barely made it 5 steps down the corridor before a hand slammed beside my head, palm flat against the stone, blocking my path. Kaedor. He did not touch me, but his body was so close I could feel the heat of him. Warmth pressed through air like fire licking at my skin. My breath stuttered. Slowly, I turned my head. The Alpha King's face hovered inches from mine, shadows carving sharp lines along his cheekbones, jaw tight enough to crack bone. His silver eyes, usually icy and distant, were burning. "What?" he growled, voice low enough to vibrate through my ribs. "Did you do to my son?" I swallowed, throat tight. "I helped him breathe. That is not an answer." I forced steel into my spine, even though terror trembled beneath it. "He nearly shifted. You saw that." His nostrils flared. "I saw you touching him." My lips parted, outrage flaring. "He was in pain." Kaedor leaned closer, so close I felt his breath on my neck. Painfully slow, deliberately dangerous. "He has lived with pain his whole life," he murmured, voice edged with fury. "Pain does not break him. But you?" His gaze seared over my face. "You will." Heat surged under my skin, anger swirling with something far more treacherous. "I would never hurt him," I said quietly. Kaedor's teeth clenched. "That is precisely the problem." I blinked. "What?" "You make him hope." His voice cracked on the word, and the sound shook me. Hope. The thing this kingdom had denied Sylas since birth. The king dragged a frustrated hand through his hair, breath shuddering with something dangerously close to panic. "No one has ever gotten that reaction from him," he said, voice quieter now, but harder. "Not healers. Not shamans. Not elders. Not even me." His admission stunned me. "You tried to help him shift?" A hollow laugh scraped from his throat. "I have broken bones and spilled blood trying." My stomach twisted. I remembered Sylas's story, of being held down, pushed past breaking. I met Kaedor's eyes, voice softening despite myself. "Pain isn't the answer." He stared down at me, silent, studying, as if something about that truth unsettled him. "It should have been." He spoke like a man confessing a crime. Pain is what made me strong. I shook my head. But Sylas isn't you. That struck him like a blade. He stepped closer still, our bodies nearly touching now. My pulse ricocheted. I could smell him, pine and steel and masculine fury. You presume to know the prince after a handful of days, he said, voice low. Do not pretend you understand my blood better than I do. I do understand him. Words poured out before I could stop them. I see him. Kaedor inhaled sharply, nostrils flaring, then whispered, And what do you see? A boy who thinks he has to earn your love. A lethal silence followed, sharp enough to cut my skin. Kaedor's eyes darkened to storm gray, pupils blown wide. No, he said, voice barely sound. He must earn his throne. He must survive first. My words sliced between us, truth sinking deep. Kaedor's jaw ticked, muscles flexing, his hands balled into fists at his sides. You will not judge me, he whispered. You know nothing about the cost of leadership. I lifted my chin, and you know nothing about love. He moved before I could breathe, one hand slamming against the stone beside my head again, his body pinning me between wall and heat. You forget your place, he rasped. Something molten crashed through my bloodstream. Then remind me, I whispered, voice trembling, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. Kaedor's breath hitched. Electric tension snapped between us, thick, alive. He stared at my mouth. For one stolen second, his gaze softened. Hungry, confused, human. I saw the battle in his eyes, want colliding with rage. Then he tore his gaze away, dragging in a strangled breath. No, he snarled, forcing distance between us. I will not. His jaw locked. I do not want you. The lie was so obvious it burned the air. You do, I whispered, unable to stop myself. His head snapped toward me, fury blazing. You think I desire servants? You think I'm just a servant? Silence. His pupils dilated. Heat rolled off him. Anger, yes, but something else. Something forbidden. His voice broke, raw, guttural. Do not tempt me. My knees weakened. He felt it, smelled it, his eyes dragging down my body before he forced them up again. I will not shame my mate's memory with this. His voice iced. My breath caught. He had spoken of her. The dead queen. She hovered between us like a ghost. You killed her? I said softly. Didn't you? Kaedor flinched. It was small, barely visible, but it was real. Yes. The words scraped from him like stone crumbling. Silence swallowed us whole. He straightened abruptly, backing away, walls rising behind his eyes. You will continue to train, Sylas, he muttered, voice rough. Shock hit me. I will. If it brings results, yes, he growled. But you will train here, under my eyes. My pulse roared. Under his eyes, where he could watch me, where sparks would burn hotter. I opened my mouth, throat dry. Why the change? He stared at me for a long, shaking moment. And then he whispered the truth like a confession. Because if I cannot stop you, I must control you. The words slammed into me, terrifying and thrilling all at once. Without another sound, Kaedor turned and stalked down the corridor, broad shoulders tense, fists clenched, jaw set in war. I leaned back against the stone wall, lungs shaking. The king wanted me near, and he hated that truth. A line had been crossed tonight, one neither of us could uncross. And for the first time since entering this palace, I feared the fire between us more than anything outside it. Training Sylas under Kaedor's command was nothing like the quiet, intimate lessons we'd shared before. It was sharper, harder, dangerously exposed, because now we were not hidden behind locked doors. Now the Alpha King watched. The next night Sylas sat cross-legged on the cool stone floor of a private training chamber, the room Kaedor had deemed appropriate. It was huge, circular, torches lining the walls, crescent windows spilling moonlight across the center like a spotlight meant for sinners. The walls were reinforced with claw-scarred wood. The air smelled of sweat, fur, and distant storms. Sylas trembled where he sat, but with determination now, not fear. I knelt behind him, one hand on his back, guiding his breath. "In for 4, I murmured. "Out for 6. He obeyed perfectly. His posture was straighter, his breaths deeper. His wolf closer. I could feel it, the hum beneath his skin like a drumbeat preparing to break open. And just beyond the torchlight, Kaedor watched, standing near the wall, arms crossed over his broad chest, head lowered slightly, silver eyes darker than I had ever seen. He made no sound, no comment, just breath, just stare. Sometimes I forgot he was there, until I turned and those eyes pinned me. Sylas whispered, "She's moving." "Who?" "My wolf." A thrill shot through me. Good. But then his breath hitched, his jaw clenched, his fingers twitched. I moved closer, my knee touching his back. "Slow down." He nodded, sweat beading his brow. "Lyris, stay close." And I did. Because the moment I touched him, magic responded. Energy flared between us again, hot and electric. Sylas gasped, spine arching. Bones crackled beneath his skin. Small shifts, tiny fractures knitting and unknitting. I held him steady, whispering to him, grounding him. "You're safe. I've got you." He exhaled shakily. "I believe you." Behind us, Kaedor's breath changed, harder, sharper, as if the trust between Sylas and I cut him open. I didn't look back. Looking back meant acknowledgement. Looking back meant danger. Instead, I placed my hands around Sylas's ribcage, thumbs spread, fingers meeting his heartbeat. "Call her," I whispered. "Call your wolf." Sylas closed his eyes and whispered to the darkness, "Come." The word vibrated through the air. Something answered. His skin rippled beneath my palms. Hot. Shifting. Alive. He cried out, half pain, half ecstasy. And then his bones popped violently, the sound echoing around the chamber like breaking branches. Sylas gasped, choking on a howl that never fully formed. I held him as the tremors ran through his body, as if he hovered on the very edge of transformation. "Good, Sylas," I breathed. "You're so close." He shuddered, voice breaking. "I can feel fur under my skin." I smiled, wild with pride. "That's your wolf awakening." Suddenly, his body lurched, hard enough to knock me backward. I landed on my palms, breath stolen. He crouched low to the ground, muscles rippling under his shirt. "Lyris," he whispered. "Do not move." His voice wasn't entirely human. Kaedor pushed off the wall. I heard the shift in weight, silent but unmistakable. Sylas's head snapped up. Moonlight hit his eyes, turning them silver again. But this time, the wolf stayed longer. 2 heartbeats. 3. 4. I stared, stunned, breath frozen in my lungs. He looked feral, powerful, alive. "Father," Sylas panted, voice shaking. "I can—" He didn't finish. The silver in his gaze flickered, then vanished. Sylas collapsed. I rushed to catch him, pulling him into my lap before he hit stone. He sobbed into my shoulder, chest heaving. "I almost shifted," he whispered. "You will," I promised. "Soon." A long silence followed, thick with awe. Sylas lifted his head to look at me, like I was air after drowning. "I owe you everything," he whispered. Emotion strangled my throat. "No, you did this." He smiled through exhausted tears. "You woke her." I kissed his forehead without thinking. Alive, proud, overflowing. And that was a mistake. Because Kaedor saw it. His voice cut through the chamber, low, rough. "Enough." I turned slowly. He stood closer now, shadows bending around him as if pulled by his gravity. His jaw was clenched tight. His chest rose and fell too fast. And his eyes. He wasn't looking at Sylas. He was looking at me, as if I had become a threat. A temptation. A weapon aimed straight at him. "Get up," he ordered. I obeyed, heart hammering. The king stepped close, far too close. So close our breaths mingled. "You will not touch him like that again." I blinked. That wasn't... His gaze dipped to my mouth, returned to my eyes. "Do not argue." Heat flared through me. Anger, desire, confusion tangled into something unholy. "You're jealous," I whispered before I could stop myself. His eyes burned. Color flushed high on his cheekbones. "I do not feel jealousy," he snarled, but his voice broke, and the denial sounded like a lie. Sylas, sitting on the floor, stared between us. Wide-eyed, confused, hopeful, afraid. Kaedor didn't look away from me. "Leave," he commanded. I opened my mouth, and heat sparked between us again, fierce and terrifying. "You look at me," he rasped, "as if you know something I do not." My pulse pounded in my ears. Maybe I do. The king's breath hitched, a tremor he couldn't hide. Silence pulsed between our bodies, thick enough to choke on. For the first time since arriving, Kaedor looked alive. Not stone, not ice. Alive. And it terrified him. He stepped back only when he had to, as if close proximity was starting a fire he couldn't contain. "Get out," he whispered again, voice breaking. So I did. But as I closed the door behind me, I knew something had changed. Kaedor no longer saw me as a servant. No longer saw me as an inconvenience. He looked at me like I woke something inside him, too. Something sleeping. Something dangerous. Something hungry. And the worst part? I wanted him to look again. The full moon rose swollen and white over the palace, a pulsing eye watching the world from above. The air tasted electric, like blood humming in a storm. Servants whispered of omens and gods. Wolves on patrol paced restlessly, claws scraping stone with tension they didn't understand. Something was coming. Everyone felt it. Only Sylas knew it was him. He stood barefoot in the center of the training chamber, the usual fear replaced by a simmering determination. His breath misted the air, sharp and hot. "I'm ready," he whispered to me. My heart pounded. "Then let's begin, Sylas." We had trained for this moment, every night, every breath, every whisper of power. But tonight was different. The moonlight poured through the windows like liquid silver, soaking into his skin. Kaedor watched from the shadows again, silent as always. A guard made of anger and memory. His presence didn't frighten me anymore. It fueled me. I knelt behind Sylas, placing my palms against his back. His pulse thundered under my fingers. "Focus," I murmured. "Breathe." He drew in a slow breath, then another. The room trembled. A low hum vibrated through my skin, the same old spark, except tonight it was wildfire. Sylas exhaled and whispered, "She's here." A shiver rippled up his spine. For a heartbeat, he glowed. Then, crack. His shoulders jerked, bone shifting beneath skin, flesh stretching. He cried out, knees buckling beneath the pain. I caught him, arms around his waist, holding him upright. "Stay with it." He gasped violently, chest heaving, breath tearing from his lungs. The sound of bone popping echoed through the chamber again, louder, sharper. Something inside him was breaking. Something else was waking. Kaedor moved closer, torches painting his face in gold and shadow. "Push," I whispered. "Let her through." Sylas clenched his teeth, his fingers digging into my wrists. "I can't..." "Yes," I breathed. "You can. I feel her." Because I did. She pulsed inside him, roaring to life. Heat seared my palms, magic rushing like electricity between our bodies. I gritted my teeth, refusing to let go. Not now. Call her, I said. Sylas screamed. The sound cracked through the space, shaking the walls. Then his body snapped backward, spine arching into a bow so tight I feared it would break. His eyes flew open, silver again, but brighter than before. And then the world exploded. Light sheared through him. Muscle tore and reformed. His body convulsed violently. He fell to all fours, fingers stretching, bones reforming beneath flesh. His jaw elongated, teeth sharpening just enough to gleam. I gasped, crawling back as the transformation ripped through him. Kaedor took a step forward, stunned, terrified, reverent. Sylas's scream became a howl, deep, primal, powerful. It filled the chamber, the hall, the palace, the kingdom. That sound raced across forests and villages, waking every wolf in the realm. I felt the shift hit the air, magic crashing outward like a tidal wave. And then, where Sylas had knelt, stood a wolf. Huge, silver-furred, eyes bright as stars. Breath ripped from my lungs in a single, shaking gasp. He was magnificent. Shock and joy tangled through my bones as I took a step toward him. Sylas. The wolf tilted his enormous head, ears twitching. I felt his thoughts, faint and wild across our bond. I am here. He leaped once, a graceful, powerful bound across the floor, landing with a snarl that shook the torches. Then he turned his eyes to his father. Kaedor's breath caught, a sharp, broken sound I had never imagined he could make. For a moment the king didn't move, couldn't move. His face cracked open. Shock and disbelief tearing away the stone mask he always wore. His silver eyes filled with something raw. Pain, yes, but beneath it, awe. Son, he whispered, voice splintering. Sylas stepped toward him. The wolf leaned in, pressing his head against the king's chest. Kaedor's knees nearly buckled. His trembling hand rose, touching Sylas's fur with reverence usually reserved for gods. His face broke entirely then, jaw unsteady, lips parting, eyes wet. I had never seen anything so sacred. And for the first time since arriving, Kaedor didn't look like a king. He looked like a father. Sylas let out a low rumble, a sound of joy, of triumph, of belonging. And Kaedor released a breath that sounded like a life returning. He knelt before his son, bowed his head, not as a ruler to a prince, but as a man to a miracle. My heart ached so violently I nearly collapsed. Sylas nudged Kaedor gently, licking his cheek. The wolf's tears catching on fur. Kaedor whispered, shaking, "Forgive me." The chamber went silent. Magic hummed around us, curling into the walls like smoke. I pressed a hand to my mouth, tears spilling hot. The curse was broken. Everyone in the kingdom would wake to a new world, where the air was no longer weak, where legends breathed, where wolves believed in miracles again. And me? I felt the weight of fate settle on my shoulders. Because when Sylas turned toward me, wolf eyes glowing like liquid mercury, every guard who watched from the shadows would remember one truth. Lyris did this. Lyris awoke the prince. Lyris changed destiny. And by sunrise, I would no longer be just a servant. I would be a legend and a target. Kaedor looked at me then. Really looked, and something shattered behind his gaze. The king who once warned me away now stared at me like I was a fire he couldn't contain. And I knew. Nothing in this kingdom would ever be the same. By morning, the entire kingdom roared with awakened wolves and whispered prophecy. The prince had shifted, and nothing, not logic, not doubt, not fear, could unmake what every living creature had heard beneath the full moon. The howl rattled through the land like thunder. Hope cracked the sky open, and a miracle breathed, but miracles never come without a price. I should have known. I woke to a hand clamping around my arm. Rough, cold, unforgiving. Get up. The voice belonged to Mistress Halden, her face pale and stiff with something between fury and terror. What? She didn't let me speak, didn't even look at me. The High Court has summoned you. My stomach dropped. My pulse roared. Summoned. That word was poison in this palace. I dressed silently in the coarse servant tunic, mind echoing with images of Sylas's wolf, silver fur glowing beneath torchlight, Kaedor's tears, the sound of the kingdom roaring back to life. I had changed everything, and now they wanted to break me for it. Halden walked ahead of me without a word, jaw tight. Servants parted as we passed, whispering, staring, some with trembling awe, others with disgust. The hallway felt different now, alive, humming. Wolves bowed their heads as Sylas was escorted past us, still in human form now, leaning against a guard with exhaustion, his body weak from transformation. But his eyes, gods, his eyes, they shone with pride. Lyris, he whispered hoarsely, trying to step toward me. The guards yanked him back. Your Highness, they warned, not now. Not now. Not ever. I managed the tiniest smile for him, hoping he could see everything I meant inside it. Then the palace court doors swung open. The chamber was packed. Nobles lined the walls, wolves from powerful families pressing close, elders in ceremonial robes with eyes like cold knives. And on the raised dais, Kaedor sat on the throne, his face carved from stone again, expression unreadable. Eyes fixed on the floor as though looking at me risked something breaking. The sight pierced deeper than iron. The queen's empty throne sat beside him like a ghost. I was forced forward, dragged to stand alone in the circle carved into the center of the chamber floor. A ritual circle, used for trials, used for punishment, used for executions. The room fell silent. An elder stepped toward me, robes brushing the floor, white eyes gleaming like snow blindness. You stand accused of witchcraft, he boomed. My knees weakened, my throat dried. Another elder hissed from the left. You used forbidden magic to awaken the prince. A third spat, voice dripping venom. You enthralled his mind, enslaving him with sorcery. Whispers spat across the room like sparks. She seduced him. She seduced them both. She bewitched the bloodline. She must be cleansed. I stared straight ahead, refusing to bow. I did nothing but help Sylas control his breathing in fear, I said, voice steady. Laughter erupted, sharp, cruel, disbelieving. You expect us to believe breath alone shattered a curse. Magic, dark magic, was involved. Ancient powers forbidden by the goddess. Her blood stinks of corruption. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked at Kaedor. His gaze finally lifted to meet mine, silver eyes burning with something I could not name. Pain, fear, conflict, desire, rage. His jaw locked, his nostrils flared, but he did not speak, did not defend me. He was the king. His silence was permission. The elders circled closer. I am not a witch, I whispered. A noble roared from the back. Then show us the magic! Shift, grow claws, prove your innocence. I lifted my chin. I don't even know what I am. The room hissed. You admit you are unnatural? I admit Sylas needed someone. The elders snarled. And why? One asked with a vicious smirk. Would you risk punishment to help a cursed prince? My answer rang through the room, because I saw him. A ripple of silence followed, so sharp and sudden it hurt. Then a voice exploded. She loves him! Gasps, hisses. Shock everywhere. I shook my head. No, not like that. A second voice slithered forward from the nobles. Then she must love the king. My entire body froze. A low, violent growl rolled through the chamber. Kaedor. Shock rippled across every face. The elders swallowed, stepping back from me. I stared at him, wide-eyed. He hadn't moved. Only that sound escaped him, primal and involuntary. I felt heat slide down my spine. Something dangerous stirred beneath the surface of the room. The lead elder cleared his throat, voice trembling. Your Majesty, is there anything you would like to say regarding this girl? All eyes turned to Kaedor. His jaw clenched so tight I thought it might shatter. His voice, when it came, was low and broken. She awakened my son. Gasps erupted. He continued. Quieter. That is the truth. Hope fluttered, small, frightened, foolish. But then he said the words that ended everything. I do not know what she is. The court exploded. She admits nothing. Black magic. Corruption. Burn her. Send her to the dungeon. The guards grabbed my arms before I could breathe. Iron shackles snapped around my wrists. Sylas screamed, voice ragged. No, let her go. He was held down, guards restraining him. Kaedor rose to his feet, towering, furious, shaking, but he did not stop them. He watched as they dragged me from the circle, as the nobles spat at me, as elders cursed my name. He watched as I was pulled across the marble floor, nails scraping stone, breath heaving with terror. Sylas thrashed wildly behind us, screaming my name. Lyris! Lyris! A guard slammed the door open. Cold air rushed in. The world spun. The last thing I saw, before darkness swallowed the castle hall, was Kaedor's face. Eyes burning, hands shaking, chest rising too fast, a man torn in half. And as the door slammed shut, I understood. I had become a threat to the throne, a legend to the people, a danger to the crown. And the price would be blood. The dungeon air tasted like metal and rot. Stone walls wept moisture, dripping cold trails down my spine every time I leaned back to keep upright. Shackles bruised my wrists, heavy and unforgiving. My head throbbed. My lip was split. There was no day or night down here, only darkness thick enough to swallow both. I did not know how long I'd been thrown into the cell. Hours? Days? Time blurred in blood and silence. My thoughts echoed. Sylas howling my name as they dragged me away. Kaedor's face, haunted, trembling, torn. The elders' venom, the nobles' lies. And worst of all, what if they were right? What if I was something unnatural? The shackles clinked when I lifted my hands, chains pulling taut. My fingers brushed blood on my jaw, dried now, stiff against skin. A torch flickered far down the hallway. Bootsteps echoed, slow, heavy, deliberate. Fear slid under my skin like ice. Execution, interrogation, punishment. It didn't matter which. Either could end me. I braced myself. The boots stopped outside my cell. Metal scraped. The barred door swung open. A hooded figure slipped inside, an elder, old as winter, smelling of ash and dust. His eyes, pale and sharp, studied me with unsettling hunger. You want to know what you are, he rasped. My throat tightened. I nodded. The elder crouched, fingers hovering just above my skin, not touching. You are Moonborn, Wolf Awakener. The title crackled through the cell, heavy and ancient. My breath hitched. I don't understand. You carry the blood of the Mulrune line, the sacred lineage once tasked to awaken wolves who could not rise alone. He lifted his eyes, voice hollow. That blood has been hunted, purged, erased from history. I stared, mind spinning. So I am cursed? No, he whispered. You are salvation. Hope split through my chest like heat, only to be snuffed out an instant later as his lips curled. And salvation is always feared. My pulse stumbled. Why tell me this? His gaze hardened. Because you must understand why you will die. The words crushed air from my body. You woke the prince, he continued, voice trembling with disgust. You have proven your power real. If you live, others will rise. Bloodlines will shift. Thrones will fall. He leaned closer. Kings do not survive awakened wolves. My heart hammered. Kaedor knows? Oh, yes, the elder hissed. He has known since you touched the prince the first night. And now he must choose. Kingdom or you? A shiver ran through me. Why come here? To savor the moment before a legend dies. Hatred flared inside me, hotter than fear. Then, as quietly as he arrived, the elder vanished into shadow, cloak whispering like a death sentence. Silence swallowed the cell again. Moonborn, wolf awakener. The words pulsed through my veins. I wasn't cursed. I was designed for this. I laughed, a broken, breathless sound. Even at the edge of execution, revelation tasted like freedom. My body sagged, exhaustion dragging me down. I closed my eyes, and then footsteps again. Different this time. Heavier, familiar. A scent seeped through the bars. Earth, rain, smoke. Kaedor. My pulse stumbled into chaos. He appeared at the cell entrance, broad silhouette filling the doorway, torchlight turning his hair to molten night. And his eyes, silver and blazing, were fixed on me. He stepped inside the cell. The door slammed behind him. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The silence hurt worse than the chains. Then he whispered, voice ruined, Lyris. Everything inside me broke at the sound. You should not be here, I rasped. Your kingdom. Damn the kingdom. I froze. He took another step, and emotion carved his face raw. I have lost battles. I have lost comrades. I have lost my father, my mother, half my clan. But nothing. His voice shook. Nothing has terrified me like almost losing you. I stared. You threw me to them, I whispered. He shut his eyes, jaw clenched, breath ragged. Yes. Why? Because if I fought them then, I would have killed them all. The words hit the cell like thunder. I could not let them see you mattered, he said. Not when they smell weakness and affection. His hand lifted, hovering inches from my face, shaking. But when they dragged you away. His voice fractured. My son screamed. I did nothing, and I have never hated myself more. Tears blurred my vision. You believe them, I murmured. You think I bewitched Sylas. He shook his head violently. No, I think you woke him. He stepped closer until his boots touched mine. And I think you woke me, too. Heat flooded my body, terror tangled with longing. His gaze dropped to my lips. He exhaled like the sight hurt him. I have been dead since the night I killed my mate, he whispered. Cold, empty, unreachable. His fingers brushed my cheek, gentle, reverent. But you. His voice cracked, raw, vulnerable. You make me feel alive again. And I don't know how to bear it. My breath shivered, my shackles rattled. Kaedor. He lifted my chained hands to his lips, kissed the bruises around my wrists, and everything inside me collapsed. I came to give you a choice, he murmured. Choice? He nodded, forehead resting against mine. Stand and fight with me, or leave tonight. My heart stopped. You would let me go if I chose. For you, he breathed, voice rough. Yes. Tears spilled hot down my cheeks, but reality clawed through me. They will hunt us. Yes. They will hate you. Yes. And still? His hands cupped my face, trembling. And still, he whispered, I choose you. Silence swallowed us whole. Then the earth itself seemed to shift, as though fate had just changed direction, and I, chained and bleeding in a cell, realized the truth. I was no longer a servant, no longer a debt, no longer powerless. I was Moonborn, Wolf Awakener, and the king was willing to burn his kingdom for me. If love had ever been a curse, then tonight it became our salvation. The throne room doors opened not with ceremony, but with thunder. Their iron frames slammed against the walls, shaking dust loose from centuries-old banners. Torches guttered, wolves jolted to their feet. The air snapped alive with shock, confusion, and something deeper, fear. Because I walked in chained no longer, and Kaedor walked beside me. My wrists were free, my head was high, and beneath my skin, power hummed like a living flame. Every noble who had screamed for my death yesterday now stared at me as if witnessing a myth unfold before their eyes. Kaedor didn't lead me. He didn't drag me. He walked at my side, shoulder to shoulder, like an equal. Behind us, Sylas followed, fully human again, supported by nothing but his own strength. His wolf eyes had not faded. Magic still shimmered behind them like silver smoke. The court erupted before we even reached the dais. "She escaped! The king has betrayed us! She has bewitched him! Treason! Witch! Monster!" I kept walking. Kaedor didn't react. Not with anger, not with threat, not with words. But the room trembled simply because he breathed. When we reached the foot of the dais, Kaedor turned and without hesitation pulled his crown from his head. Gasps ripped across the room. He slammed the heavy metal onto a guard's armor and growled, "No crown commands me tonight. I speak as a man, as a father, and as the wolf who saw truth." Silence crushed the chamber. Elders clutched their robes like shields. Nobles paled beneath their jewels. And Kaedor turned to me. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the two of us. He reached up and brushed his knuckles along my cheek. Slow, reverent, trembling. "I came to the throne through blood," he said, voice low enough that only I could hear. "But I will rise beyond it through love." Then he faced the court again. His voice thundered, "Lyris, daughter of the Moonborn line, Wolf Awakener of my son, will stand before this court as my chosen mate." Shouts broke. Challenges erupted. Wolves snarling. Elders shouting spells beneath their breath. "She bewitched him with sorcery. The king has fallen. This is treason against the goddess." Kaedor raised one hand. Just one. The room fell silent. Magic pulsed from him. Authority wrapped in centuries of alpha blood. "You called her witch," he said, voice deathly calm. "But she awakened a prince no healer or elder or king could reach. She did not curse my bloodline. She redeemed it." His gaze swept the room, white hot. "And if anyone dares claim otherwise, step forward." Not a single noble moved. Not a single wolf breathed. Kaedor's gaze burned into them, one by one. "You want a kingdom steeped in tradition," he growled. "But tradition gave me a broken child, a dead mate, a hollow throne." He turned to Sylas. "Look at my son." Sylas stepped forward immediately. He stood tall, chin high, shoulders straight, wolf energy pouring off him like sunlight. "Call him cursed," Kaedor snarled, "and watch every wolf on this earth know you as cowards." Sylas swallowed and met his father's gaze with something warm and new. Trust. Then he turned to me. When he spoke, his voice carried across the hall, stronger than I had ever heard it. "Lyris awoke me." Gasps again. "She saved me." A tremble rippled through the court. "And I love her." My breath stopped. Not romantic love, not possessive love. He meant family. He meant belonging. Kaedor's hand pressed to Sylas's shoulder, gentle, proud. It was the first time I had ever seen a king look small, faultless tears welling at the corners of his eyes. Then Kaedor spoke the words that sealed a kingdom's fate. I claim her as queen. Chaos erupted, elders screaming, nobles shouting, guards stepping forward, until Kaedor roared, "Silence!" Wolves dropped to their knees instinctively. Those who resisted were forced down by their own trembling bones. Not from fear, from awe. Kaedor turned to me again. "Lyris," he said quietly, "will you accept me as mate?" My heart hammered. Every moment of my life rose up at once. The night I was sold like property, the bruises, the chains, the terror, the boy with no wolf, the king with no warmth, the cell, the magic, the truth. And I heard myself whisper, "Yes." Kaedor inhaled sharply, as if he had been waiting his entire life for that single syllable. He stepped closer and pressed his forehead to mine. Magic burst, a wave of silver heat rippling through the hall, knocking breath from every wolf present. Our scents braided, our souls brushed, our wolves howled. A bond formed, not weak, not soft, not pretty. A bond forged in blood, sacrifice, defiance, and impossible love. Sylas let out a shaky laugh and pulled me into his arms. "I have a family now," he whispered into my shoulder. "Thank you." I hugged him back, gently, fiercely, tears burning trails down my cheeks. The court watched, numb, humbled, awed. Kaedor stepped beside us and placed one hand on both our shoulders. For the first time, we were 3 wolves standing together. A pack, a future, a family. Nobles knelt, elders bowed, servants pressed foreheads to the floor. The kingdom, broken by fear for generations, knelt not to a king, but to truth. And then Kaedor turned to the court. "Rise to greet Queen Lyris." The title hit my skin like lightning. Queen, me, whispers rippled, astonished, terrified. Moonborn, Wolf Awakener, a queen born from ashes. Kaedor took my hand and led me to the empty throne beside his. A seat once meant for a woman he had loved and killed. He looked at me, not with guilt now, but with acceptance. This throne was not a shadow. It was a beginning. I sat. The hall bowed again. Kaedor whispered, low enough for only me to hear, "You changed everything." And I did. I stood, raising my voice. My first command as queen. This court will remember. I did not rise to serve the crown. The torches flared, sparks raining. I became the fire that melted it. Silence, terror, reverence, and somewhere deep inside the stone walls of this kingdom, something ancient howled its approval. The world had a new queen, and nothing would ever be the same. The kingdom never truly slept, but tonight, the silence felt sacred. The moon hung low and full above the palace gardens, turning the flowers silver, painting the stone arches in soft glow. I stood barefoot on the balcony of my chambers, the queen's chambers, my fingers curled around the railing, breathing in the cold night air. It tasted different now, no longer like fear, but like possibility. Behind me, the heavy doors creaked open. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Kaedor's presence brushed against my spine, warm and steady, the way his silent arrival always did. "You should be resting," he murmured, voice husky with sleep. "You always say that," I teased, "and you always ignore it." I smiled. Some habits refuse to break. He stepped beside me, his long fingers brushing mine. The faint tremble beneath his skin still surprised me sometimes. Power didn't erase emotion. Power just gave it room to breathe. Below the balcony, the garden shimmered with moonlight, and at its center, Sylas ran with 3 other young wolves, laughing, playing, alive. Alive. Kaedor followed my gaze. There was pride in his eyes, but also something deeper. Peace. "He shifted again this morning," he said softly. On his own. No guidance. My chest filled with warmth. I knew he would. Kaedor turned toward me, studying my face. You did more than wake his wolf. You gave him a reason to want to live. I shook my head. He found that reason himself. I just held the door open. Kaedor fell quiet for a long moment, then whispered, I almost lost him. I almost lost you. I leaned into his shoulder. Those days are gone. He didn't respond with words, only wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me against him, resting his forehead briefly on my hair. No one watching us would believe this man once ruled with iron. Now he ruled with something far more terrifying. Love. A breeze drifted past, carrying whispers from the palace below. Wolves laughed. Music played faintly. For the first time in generations, no fear hung in the air. Kaedor pressed a kiss to my temple. Tomorrow the council meets to rewrite the laws on wolf birthright. Sylas will not be the last wolfless pup. Good, I said. Let the kingdom grow, not cower. He smiled. You sound like a queen. I laughed. I am a queen. Kaedor curled his fingers beneath my chin, tilting my face toward his. Do you regret it? Regret what? Becoming queen. I pressed my hand to his heart. No, I whispered. Because before the crown, I was no one. Now, I am myself. His mouth brushed mine, slow, reverent. We stood beneath the moon, bodies close, hearts steady. A king reborn. A prince awakened. A kingdom remade. And I, once a servant sold for debt, now stood at the center of it. Power humming in my pulse, love threading through my bones. The night wind stirred, lifting my hair, whispering across the balcony like a promise. This was only the beginning.